Clean architecture. Clean architecture is one possible way to organize an object-oriented program. It divides the classes into layers according to their role. We can see here the most central layer is made up of entities. These are the building blocks of our domain. For example, let's say we're writing a program that allows users to log into their gym's website and look at a list of group exercise sessions. Depending on their membership, they can sign up for 1, 3, or 6 classes per week through this program. The domain of our program would then be
sign up program for group exercise classes.
So the entities will probably be session and gym member, among others. The use case layer is responsible for storing entities and changing the values of their variables. The use case classes answer the question, what is allowed to happen to the entities? For example, if we had a gym member manager class, it might have a method called canJoinSession that finds a member and checks if they're allowed to join another session. Maybe they've already maxed out the number of sessions they can join this week, maybe not. CanJoinSession method will determine which one is true. Likewise, the session system class might have a method called addToSession that takes a member's ID and adds it to the list of people stored in a particular session. These use case classes call the methods inside the entities according to what the gym allows. In general, not just in this program, these are the business rules of the company, sometimes called the enterprise business rules. Controller classes take in information from the user and decide which use case method to call. For example, if the user selects join session, a controller method will read this input and do something like this. The controller class itself doesn't perform the check or add the user. It just calls use case methods, and they do that. It separates the rules about what the user is allowed to do from the rules governing what is allowed to happen to the entities. One controller method might call a number of different methods in the use case layer to allow the user to do one specific thing. Use case classes enforce what we call the enterprise business rules. In other words, what are the rules of the domain? What is allowed to happen to the entities? These rules will stay the same from program to program as long as those programs apply to the same domain. In our example, these are the rules of the gym. Controller classes enforce the application business rules. Those are the rules of your app. They decide what the user is allowed to do. If you write an app that allows someone to renew their gym membership, this will have a different controller from your group exercise sign-up program, but it'll have mostly the same use case layer because it's for the same gym. Presenter classes are responsible for gathering and formatting information to send to the user interface. In our example, the menu options will appear on the screen because a presenter class decided which strings should appear and in which order. Then the presenter sends those strings to the user interface to display on the screen. Gateway classes are responsible for sending and receiving information from anything that is outside your program. This includes devices, other than your screen and keyboard. For example, at a restaurant, a gateway class would be responsible for sending the bill from the restaurant software to a printer so the customer can have a hard copy. Another example is the scanner at a grocery store. The laser scanner that goes beep when you scan a barcode is actually sending that barcode to a gateway class that will then pass the code to the back end of the program. If your program reads from a file or writes to a file, this will also happen through a gateway class. If your program interacts with a database, that will also happen through a gateway class. Why do we bother with these gateway classes? Well, if you change the database, or you change a piece of hardware and substitute it for a different one, you will have to change the code somewhere in your program. But if you make the gateway class interact with that file or the database or the hardware, then only the gateway class has to change. The rest of your code can stay the same. These are the layers of clean architecture. Along with this organization comes one rule, the dependency rule. And it says, Outer layers can depend on inner layers, but not the other way around. If you follow that rule, you will be able to reuse the central layers of your code. For example, changing your program from a web app to an Android app will require a change to the user interface or UI, and maybe parts of your controller layer, but not the inner two layers. If you want to create another program for the same gym that does something else, you can still use the same use case and entities. Clean architecture follows the ports and adapters design pattern, the solid principles, and much more. Using this organization will make your code easy to maintain, extend, and reuse.